Hi, everybody. It's so wonderful to be able to share with you and present this material today. My name is Jaylyn Simmons. I'm a recent graduate of Juilliard School. I received my undergraduate in vocal performance and will be returning for the fall for my master's degree. I do a lot of work in activism and civil rights and cross-cultural relations. I just love it. I love it so much. It is the second part of me. Besides music, that is my second calling, I feel. And I'm so thankful for Natalie for reaching out and letting me do this and take over a program I've been watching and seeing a couple things. And it really is a great, great project. So if you're not already following Literary and Music Series, go ahead and do that now. Today we're going to be talking about Florence Price, who is just a gem of a woman, an amazing, amazing female African-American composer. And I'll be referencing from The Heart of a Woman. It's the story and life of Florence Price by Ray Brown. And so this is actually a really great book that I dove into maybe a couple weeks ago. And I've been going, you just revisit a book, you go to it and you leave it away for a second, you go back to it. And that's been this book for me. I've chosen several passages that I want to kind of reference along this journey along with me. I've chosen 3 pieces to kind of look at today. 2 of them are voice pieces and one is a piano work. I know I'm biased, so I picked voice pieces, but I thought it was really, really important to actually recognize the other things, because one of the big notes that I'm sure is in every textbook, every autobiography, is that a lot of music that pertains to more symphonic works and opera works were considered only for masculine male composers, while art song and chamber music considered more feminine, therefore reserved for female composers. And she just defied all odds while still being put in these boxes at the time, and did not get the recognition that she deserved. And so I'm going to take the time to let you all listen and enjoy these recordings and enjoy these letters and passages. Another thing I'll plug in at the beginning here is an organization that you give to. Anytime I do anything on camera nowadays, I try and put a plug in. And so the organization that I'll be giving to is Black Organizers for Leaders and Dignity, otherwise known as BOLD. And BOLD is a national leadership training program that aims to equip Black leaders with the skills needed to place themselves at the forefront of movements for social justice. So if you have the means to do so, even if you don't and you know someone who does want to give, check in on their site. They're a really great organization, and every little bit helps, and I always remind people there's no small way to help. Everything that you do to keep us safe, to keep us healthy, to keep us honest is a win in my book. So don't feel as if you're not doing enough, because you probably are. So I hope you all take some time to look into that. And without further ado, I would love to get started. So Florence Price was born in 1887 in Little Rock, Arkansas. And her mother was also a fairly good musician, did a lot of singing, but never went professionally. And her father was an activist and very active in the church. Their entire family was extremely, extremely active, actually. When she at 15 graduated high school, she actually took a year off to really dive deep into piano and organ study, so that then she could later attend the New England Conservatory of Music. And she did that for her undergrad, and then found herself returning for Arkansas. And she continued to teach and try to make it work in a school system that was just deteriorating at the time. And after a while being there and her father passing away, she chose to move to Atlanta to teach in Atlanta for a while. And then she actually got married and moved up to Chicago and decided to pursue classical music there in the Midwest. And so what I want to really focus on here actually is, I want to read a letter. I'm just going to find where I bookmarked it. Here we go. Or actually, I want to read a passage to you. So this is the time she was in Chicago. Her music was actually getting a lot of recognition, but only within that small community. So people weren't hearing about it on the coasts per se, but it did get played a lot. So just 2 weeks after her symphony was performed by the Chicago Symphony, she was invited to play two of her piano compositions at Kimball Hall, July 1st, 1933, in a program of original compositions organized by members of the American Conservatory faculty. Among those participating were two of Chicago's distinguished composers, Arthur Olaf Anderson, with whom Price had studied, and organist Leo Saubry, a prolific composer of church music with whom Price had developed a cordial professional relationship. So, Price played the first movement of her award-winning piano sonata in E minor and Little Cabin Lullaby from her newly composed dances in the Canebriggs for piano. This concert marked the beginning of numerous performances of the piano sonata and the dances. For those pianists who wanted to perform large-scale piano works by a Black composer, Price's compositions were a welcome addition to the repertoire. The three-movement sonata, which is a rather conservative harmonically and structurally, is an expansive work in the Romantic tradition. The first movement adheres closely to classic formal design, a sonata form movement with a slow introduction. The first theme in E minor is a confident and uplifting spiritual-like theme. A short transition leads to a threefold statement. The lyrical second theme in C major. So, I wanted to play this piece for you all, at least the first movement. I'm going to turn my camera off while I do this because I realize it actually helps with the quality of sound. So give me 2 minutes. I have a whole playlist here for you guys. So here we are. This is the first movement of her sonata in E minor. So that was that first Andante movement. And I actually really want to find the Allegro uh, scherzo. Here we go. There's um there's essence of that same theme, obviously, um, but it's just insanely virtuosic and not something at this time people were expecting African American women to dish out. Um, so I really want to play this actually to give you a sense. So that is what everyone was so eager to get their hands on and be able to play. And rightfully so. It's such a virtuosic piece. Um, Once the mid 1930s kind of hit for her, she composed a lot of her work during this time, but this was also one of the hardest times for her. She was almost homeless, um, quite penniless at some times. She'd already been divorced and had a child, and it got to the point where her mother moved in with them in order to help foot the bill because they weren't certain they were going to be able to keep their house. And so one of the people who was producing or publishing her music, Theodore Presser, was actually not really doing a great job about living up to that. And so here's a letter that she wrote to Henry Sawyer, who was kind of his right-hand man, was Presser's right-hand man, about the publications. Actually, he wrote this to her, and she was concerned that she wasn't being advocated for. So it reads, "As you may have suspected, I was fully aware of what was going on in the publication department relative to your compositions. But I am glad to tell you that they won out on their own merit and would probably have been accepted had I not been there. All I did was tell them something about you, and that I had great faith in your final ability to make good. When I knew that the 3 numbers were to be accepted, I was as pleased as though they had been my own. I don't believe I ever told you about a year ago as 6 violin and piano compositions of my own were accepted and published by Presser. I will send you copies of the first time I think of it. They are very different from yours, first of all, beginning on ancient patterns as
as is consistent with my advanced age. He was 69 at the time. So it was a big deal for him to be able to reach out and confirm that these works were going to be published. And this is when things really turned around for her. Then there was a time while she was living with her mother, she wrote a letter to Mr. Barnett, and it reads here. They had offered her mother a position in the, or her a position in the National Association for Composers and Conductors, and so she wrote this letter to him. Dear Mr. Barnett, because my mother is so reticent about mentioning her own achievements, and because she feels that she is imposing on your good nature to give you such facts so often, as she puts it, I decided I would take it upon myself to tell you that she has just been notified of her having been made a member of the National Association for Composers and Conductors. This organization is composed of America's most outstanding composers of classical music and conductors of the largest symphony orchestras. I feel sure that you, like others who know my mother personally, know that she is really too modest for her own good. Knowing that, I believe you will endorse my taking the initiative in getting this information into your hands. Yours truly, Florence Price. This was a really, really big deal because up until this point where she was penniless, her work wasn't getting out there like it should have. The main organization that kind of fostered her work and made sure it got out there for people to see was the Illinois Federation of Music Clubs. It was an important forum for the dissemination of Price's music. With that, I want us to listen to some of the vocal works. So the piece I want to share is Debts. This is from the cycle of Lost Art Songs. I guarantee these were some of those pieces that were in those boxes that University of Chicago had found. So there were so many boxes of manuscripts and scores and things that were about to be left to time, basically. We didn't realize how much music she had actually composed until they found these archives. So I'm going to share again. And we'll go one right after the other, Debts, and then I Remember.
My debt to you is one I cannot when all the dreams were dead. Oh, where is the appraiser?
So two like gorgeous, gorgeous pieces. Um, it's unfortunate that they were a part of this lost collection because they were found so late post her death. There's not many transcriptions and lyrics to pull from. And so I'm actually making it my thing to really pull apart this cycle actually and write them out for myself and find the manuscripts and really dive into it. But it's assumed that these pieces were, again, written during the 1930s, which we all know is also the time Harlem Renaissance was kind of in swing. And although Chicago was a musical central for her, she couldn't deny the amount of activity on the coast was far more appealing to her. So getting her music out to New York, out to Boston, out to all of these great coastal areas was key. And so, where's it here? There's a section in here where she writes her letters. I love a good letter. And so for those of you who, this is the wrong section. For those of you who don't know, she actually did a lot of reaching out to a composer, Sergei Kuzvitsky, who at the time was conductor of Boston Symphony. So Sergei Kuzvitsky, conductor of Boston Symphony, was arguing the case for her symphonies. Kuzvitsky was well known for his enthusiastic support of American composers. Not only did he perform American works, but he commissioned the new ones as well. And so this was a really big deal for her to get to that place where her music could make it to the coast and she could hopefully find her way, what it seemed like to me, finding her way out of Chicago and to the coast. So it took several years to get follow-ups. Sergei was not the best at responding and being timely in that way. And so she requested again in 1941 with a very lengthy, detailed letter. And I cannot wait to read it to you because I love a good letter. Describing her philosophy towards the composition and the recent performances of the work. And so it states here, after graduating from the New England Conservatory, I returned to my native South to teach. I have an accumulation of scores and manuscripts which during the past few years here in Chicago I have been bringing to light with the result of several performances. Having colored blood in my veins and having been born in the South, I believe I can say that I understand real Negro music as well, if not better, than the kind I studied in the East. I have an overture based on the Negro spiritual, Sinner Please Don't Let This Harvest Pass, which was performed here with results most encouraging to me. Having read that you are particularly interested in American music, I'm hoping you will give something of mine a trial. So we all know by this time, he didn't respond. We don't know if it was intentional or there were people who were purposely not getting him the materials. But she persisted. And then in July of 1943, it is described here as an immediately cut to the chase, quite a long letter about the hardships that she's gone through to get where she was. And we got a response after that. But she writes here, my dear Kuzvitsky, to begin with, I have two handicaps, those of sex and race. I am a woman, and I have some Negro blood in my veins. Knowing the worst, then, would you be good enough to hold in check the possible inclination to regard a woman's composition as long on emotionalism, but short on virility, and thought content, until you shall have examined some of my work. As to the handicap of race, may I relieve you by saying that I neither expect nor ask any concession on that score. I should like to be judged on merit alone, the great trouble having been to get conductors who know nothing of my work. I am practically unknown in the East, except perhaps as the composer of two songs, of one or the other of which Marian Anderson includes on most of her programs, to even consent to examine a score.
I confess that I am woefully lacking in the hardihood of aggression, that writing this letter to you is the result of having successfully done battle with a hounding timidity. Having been born in the South and having spent most of my childhood there, I believe I can truthfully say that I understand the real Negro music. In some of my work, I make use of the idiom undiluted again, and at other times, it merely flavors my theme. And at still other times, thoughts come in the garb of the other side of my mixed racial background. I've tried to, for particular purposes, to cultivate and preserve a facility of expression in both idioms. Although I have an unwavering and compelling faith that a national music very beautiful and very American can come from the melting pot, just as the nation itself has done. Will you examine one of my scores? Yours very sincerely, Miss Florence Price. So you can tell she's getting really, really frustrated. She then writes another letter in November, so a few months later, and states here, "My dear Dr. Kuzvetsky, unfortunately, the work of a woman composer is preconceived by many to be light, frothy, lacking in depth, logic, and virility. Add to that the incident of race. I have colored blood in my veins, and you will understand some of the difficulties that confront one in such a position. My own detestable but seemingly unconquerable shyness has not served me to gain for me widespread hearing. The few times I have been able to overcome this handicap in the past and to manage to get a score examined, I have met with most gratifying results, as you will note in the comments of critics quoted in my folder. Now that duties connected with caring for parents and children have been lifted from my shoulders, I do so want to make tangible progress and to get examined and perform some of my accumulated scores. In keeping with one last promise to myself that I shall no longer hang back, italicized. I am now being so bold as to address you. I ask no concessions because of race or sex, and am willing to abide by a decision based solely on the worth of my work. Will you be kind enough to examine a score of mine? Very truly yours, Miss Florence Price." So we could say she was a very, very persistent woman. She didn't receive any reply until November 17th, which was how many days after this was sent? She sent this letter on November 6th. Got a response November 17th from him. So if that isn't a sign, I don't know what is. And then she actually didn't write him back until next year in May. She was profusely apologizing of her lateness and actually sent some scores in. The reason she was late, she was actually in the hospital for reasons unknown to me. What I want to share with you, as we're coming up on the end of time here, is some text from actually a very, very popular cycle of hers. I say popular in the sense that people who know her music know this music, but alas, her music is not performed often. And so I ask you all to take time and go experience these pieces, but I'll leave you with this and the last piece. So one day she was feeling particularly introspective. She wrote this piece, Resignation, a song set in the manner of a spiritual for which she wrote both the words and the music. And the words are, "My life is a pathway of sorrow. I've struggled and toiled in the sun, with hope that the dawn of tomorrow would break on a work that is done. My master has pointed the way. He taught me in prayer to say, Lord, give us this day and our daily bread. I hunger, yet I shall be fed. My feet, they are wounded and dragging. My body is tortured with pain. My heart, it is shattered and flagging. What matter if heaven I gain? Of happiness once I have tasted, but only an instant is pause. Though brief was the hour that I wasted, forever the woe that it caused. I'm tired and want to go home. My mother and sister are there. They're waiting for me to come.
where mansions are bright and fair. I would say, if you have the time to listen to that piece especially, uh, listen to the cycle. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous cycle. I'm only stopping because I know I'm probably going over my time. But the last piece I want to share with you is piano piece. This is Fantasie Negre No. And I fell especially in love with this piece. And actually, it's referenced here in the autobiography. It was said that Little Rock, Arkansas has another name, Negro Paradise. And so I can't help but think that this piece, which is one of her earlier works, this piece was in honor of that, in her home and her culture and her family. And so I'm honored and respect her memory by sharing this with you. So this is Fantasie Negre No. 2. There we go. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. Thank you, Natalie, and to everyone at the Literary Music Series for having me. Just for reference, I want to pull up the book so you guys know where to find it if you want to read. Again, the book is titled Heart of a Woman, The Life and Music of Florence Price by Ray Linda Brown. So this is the cover. I got it on, what is this, Apple Books here. I got it on Apple Books. You can probably find it at a Barnes and Nobles or Kindle. I'm certain it's on there. But I found mine for about $15 on Amazon Books. If it interests you, take the time, listen to music, read a book, take the time for yourself, everyone. I want everyone to be safe and healthy and happy. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Have a great day, guys. Thank you.